Van Sheikh, Regional Editor, and welcome to this episode of OBG Talks. Today I'm joined by Amr Talaat. He is the Egyptian Minister of Communications and Information Technology. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Very pleased to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we would like to explore a few of the trends we're seeing in Egypt regarding the ICT sector in light of COVID-19. And for the first question, I would like to ask you to share your assessment of how the short-term challenges of the sector have been addressed. We're looking at the increased demand for ICT services as a result of COVID-19. How has Egypt managed to address this huge rise in demand for ICT?
COVID-19, of course, has compelled people to change the patterns of how they live, how they socialize, how they work, how they learn, how they receive training, and Egypt is no exception. So people simply went fully digital. For most of their aspects in life. People shop online, learn online, socialize online, entertain online. So the pandemic eruption was immediately coupled with an immediate surge in the internet usage patterns in terms of the number of people online simultaneously and the peak hours that have doubled, both have doubled actually, with the eruption of the pandemic. Luckily, we have executed a major infrastructure fortification project during 2019 that enabled the infrastructure in Egypt to absorb the unprecedented and of course unplanned multiplication of loads on and pressure on the infrastructure. However, there's also other efforts that are equally important. How to shift people to digital marketing, digital learning, how to shift people to digital working, even digital socialization. These change in patterns, these new transitional to a more efficient and more digitally reliant means of conducting people's various activities during the day was a very interesting experience for my colleagues at MCIT and myself.
Absolutely. So could you tell us a bit more about how this was conducted? For example, Egypt has a very diverse and strong private sector in the ICT sector. So can you tell me a bit more about the collaboration between yourselves and other government entities and the private sector in addressing this significant demand that was seen during the first half of the year?
Actually, what we sat and started contemplating what are the main activities that people would want to continue practicing during the pandemic. And first and foremost is education and learning and training. So together with my colleagues, the ministers of education and higher education, we set up a platform for all the academic activities that used to take place, whether in universities or at school, and avail it for all students in Egypt. And when I say all students in Egypt, these are around 16 or 17 million students who were encouraged to go on the web and access the academic material that is assigned for them. And we availed it for free for the first 3 months. of the pandemic in order to encourage people to start the habit and the culture of shifting to a fully digitalized manner in training. Also, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a challenge of educating people about the pandemic and what to do in order to protect oneself and one's family, especially at the early stage where medically things were changing and medical opinions were changing frequently. And together with the Ministry of Health, we set up another platform for doctors online, where there's a 24/7 medical service for citizens to call in and receive medical assistance and advice over the web. The second stage was to encourage more people to work online. And this was another challenge. We started with MCIT itself. We encouraged our colleagues to work from home. We set up video conferencing facilities for meetings. The challenge was to strike the balance between the efficiency and making sure that our productivity is maintained as much as we can, and of course to protect our colleagues from the hazards of the pandemic. So we resorted to changing the work style of our colleagues, and then propagate this to other government entities, and thus to also other sectors in the market, as the private sector, as you've said. So now the culture of working from home is prevalent. It's prevalent in Egypt. It's been prevailing since maybe 2 or 3 months now, and getting more and more acceptable. People are more and more comfortable with it, and able to confide in this new system. Now I believe that hopefully when the pandemic is over, people will not resume what they used to do in education or at work the way things were before the pandemic. It's a new world that's going to be created after the pandemic is over, hopefully soon.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really interesting point you touched on, because actually my next question is to do with the digitalization acceleration that we're seeing. And we've talked about what's happened in the short term. As you mentioned so rightly, we need to look at the long-term steps and how these are addressed from all different angles. So I want to ask you, what are the long-term steps needed to support Egypt's ICT revolution across all sectors of the economy?
Egypt has embarked on digitalizing all the government services since 2019. We started in one governorate in Egypt, Port Said, where now more than 150 various government services across the spectrum of all the ministries and activities that the government perform, and now all these services are rendered to our citizens online. This was planned to be deployed in the rest of the country in 2020. The pandemic actually accelerated this project and helped more and more citizens to resort to the digital means in receiving government services versus the traditional way of going to a government agency for that purpose. Of course, the pandemic, the hesitance of leaving home or going to crowded places helped a great deal people to break the culture, and as you know, change is always a challenge, because this is the human nature. So the pandemic helped in convincing people, in encouraging people to embrace the new means of receiving government services. Now, this is widely accepted. We're getting ready to launch a new platform, Digital Egypt, where all the government services will be offered to all citizens across the country. We're starting with 70 services, and then more and more services will be deployed till the end of 2020 and maybe onwards till mid-21, where all government services would be digitalized and rendered through the digital platform.
Absolutely, and I think that long-term view is very important, especially regarding kind of international investors with whom we deal a lot with at Oxford Business Group. So my final kind of concluding point is to ask you about other sectors as well. Evidently, ICT is very central to this digitalization initiative, but it's one of many sectors that will be affected by this in the coming years. So I'd like to ask you, in what ways will investment in intelligent technologies boost the overall competitiveness of the Egyptian economy in light of these sometimes challenging economic circumstances going forward?
I always say what makes the ICT industry special is that it always stands on two equally important pillars. The first pillar is the industry discretely, like any other industry. The sector needs to grow and create more jobs and expand in exports. But the other equally important pillar is to help other sectors improve the way they perform, help increase their productivity, lower their costs, increase their efficiency, their ability to serve citizens. So our success always depend on these two pillars and a set of KPIs pertaining to each pillar. Your question is about our responsibility and role in enabling other sectors in making this happen. Let me tell you one success story that may reflect this important point. A center that we've just established towards the end of last year, the Applied Research Center. This center deploys high-tech solutions that are reliant on new ICT branches like AI, like cybersecurity, like data science, like IoT, and then deploy these technologies in solutions that would help sectors like medicine, agriculture, training, education, irrigation and water management. These important challenges that Egypt is trying to embrace, we're trying to deploy the new technologies in order to help these sectors in their increasing their ability to embrace these challenges. So we're developing together with I would call it a jet set of international distinguished companies that are leaders in their specializations. We're holding joint projects in the center that addresses the sectors that I've just mentioned and creates and builds systems that would have an extremely positive impact on the sector's performance and its productivity going forward. We're currently engaged in building a solution for medical care for retinopathy disease. We're currently engaging in irrigation and water management solution depending on artificial intelligence. intelligence. We're also engaged in natural language processing for Arabic, whether local Egyptian dialect or classical Arabic, macroeconomics, urban planning, lots of diversified set of projects that would hopefully have a positive impact on our economy and our society when accomplished.
Absolutely. And I think you summarized that perfectly in talking about this ecosystem of suppliers, stakeholders that need to collaborate going forward and on a national and also international level as well. So thank you so much for all your comments. That's extremely insightful information, and we very much look forward to seeing how this all pans out. So, Your Excellency, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure.